Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'll do is I'll just walk you through very important few points, and there's a lot of text here, but I just walk you through some points, and then we'll look at the demo itself. This is important because this top level thinking might be useful to agree upon, right? And refine. I think this is just a first draft, but if you have points, we can refine this, right? So this is written for the DMU report. So the DMU, which is the Data Management Unit for NLTM. And the key thing is we are trying to build a tool that can work across many languages and many tasks, right? Text curation, translation, transliteration, speech curation, speech transcription, speech recording, OCR, NLU, and so on. So basically, a single tool that does this many number of tasks and is specialized to work on many Indian languages, right? That's what we want to build. And across both these axes, we are looking at over 1 billion human annotation inputs, right? So we're looking at a huge scale of work to be done. And sometimes it is not clear to people who are looking at this that we are looking to collect so much data, right? So that is the first thing to recognize. We're trying to build a tool for this. While this is, I have written it from the perspective
Curious,
of DMU.
how did you come to 1 billion? Just wanted to understand how
Yeah. So that the table that we have, Vivek. So I've taken, of course, all kinds of data, right, including noisy data and so on. So across all this point, we have over 1 billion, all languages times all data times all tasks, right, including NLU, where we are translating things and creating data sets, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I'll share that calculation with you. So first, we need to first create a tool that needs to support all these custom user interfaces, right? So this requires, for example, one user interface for speech recording, one user interface for sentiment classification, right? So we should be able to create custom user interfaces and ensure that these interfaces are efficient for annotators, meaning they work well on desktops, they have support for Indian language input, they have keyboard shortcuts, things like that. And they must be also, it is only easy to create a new interface. For example, if I tell you that I need to create a new interface where somebody sees an English text and the Hindi text, and then creates Dogri translation. They want to see two texts and then translation. That should be possible. So you should be able to create new interfaces fairly quickly without major code changes. The second requirement is that, and this is important, which is that across all these tasks, so many tasks are being done by users, but there is an underlying common view of the data. So there is some data from which a task is created. That basically people enrich the data, and it comes back to this common ground view of data, right? And from this ground view, again, a new task could be created, right? So this idea of chaining multiple tasks become possible. For example, I might be curating monolingual text, right? Arvind, you were doing it. You were creating this Excel sheet of URLs, right? From the URLs, then some scraping tool can create monolingual corpora. Then this monolingual corpora could be split into sentences. Then somebody could translate sentences. And then somebody could speak out these sentences, right? So as you can see, the same pipeline is creating different views of data. And this is only possible somehow if you can have this format of a data set from which you are sampling data, annotating it, and putting it back, right? And this also becomes relevant because you may filter data based on criteria. So let us say we were looking at LabSay score during Samanantar, right? I might create LabSay score for some parallel text and get these scores, and then say show to annotators only those which have a high LabSay score, right? Maybe 0.85 and above, right? So that should also be possible. So this common ground view of data is important. Then there should be automated functions and filtering between serially chained tasks. So between these tasks that I mentioned, like for example, collecting sentences and then translating them, you should be able to filter. For example, you should be, as I said, you should be able to filter by LabSay and so on. So these should be things you can programmatically write. So take these two columns, and if these values are greater than this value is greater than this, then create a new task out of this, right? For example, we may only want to filter sentences that have a length of larger than 10 words, right? So this is the second, these are the 3 points I've covered so far. One is custom user interfaces, then common view of the data, then annotation and filtering, automatic filtering. Then this one is not relevant right away, but internally we want it to be deeply integrated with the ML ops that we are doing. We are training models from these data sets, and we want it to be working with that. I'll skip this for now. And we also importantly want to export data in standardized formats, including for Ulka directly. Right? We should be able to. We have an export function. We should be able to say export, and it should create the file and also the appropriate metadata that Ulka expects, right? And we should be able to upload it. Right? So these are the goals of the tool, right? Whatever tool we build, we have these goals given our very ambitious goals in terms of data collection, right? And again, though it is data collection, it may apply to something like Anuvad also. Right? Um, I'll skip this part. Mainly, we are targeting for high efficiency of data collection. We are trying to ensure that the data that we collect has rich metadata linking different items. For example, a very simple thing, right? If I take an English sentence and I want to translate it into n languages to create n-way parallel data sets, I must be able to link all this, and I must be able to know this sentence was created from this source sentence by so and so person, and be able to link this in n different across n different sentences, right? And this is what I mentioned here. And also something again, not for now, but all machine learning models that are trained with data created in the tool should be reproducible, right? One thing that you might have heard about is machine learning. Reproducibility is important. I should be exactly able to get the same model, and we are going to have a version control in the data, and you should be able to say this is the data that you used and trained a model, and be able to replicate that, right? If you have the right hyperparameters and seeds. And of course, it should be on the cloud. It should accommodate multiple organizations, though AI for Bharat may run it internally, but maybe somebody else wants to run it. We should accommodate that. And within an organization, there should be many language teams who are working on independent workspaces, etc. Right? So broadly, this is what it looks like. So the key thing is, in the middle, you have these opinionated data schemas, which are going to capture the typical ML data for language data. Right? For example, we have a schema for translation data. Right? This is not just like the final data that you have in Ulka, but all the intermediate things that may be relevant in the process. Okay, all of that we have as an opinionated schema. And from this, data is being filtered, sampled, and sent to annotation UIs, which are basically web front ends for efficient performance of those tasks, which are being used by our language experts. And just to give you a sense now, we have approximately 60 people, close to 60 people hired within AI for Bharat already, who are doing these tasks, right? So onboarding them, ensuring that they are finding it comfortable and so on. And of course, iterating with them. They often come with many requests on their side on what these UIs should look like, and supporting them. And on this side, I didn't talk much about it, but we expect, just like people are able to edit data, they expect functions to be able to edit data as well, right? For example, a function to compute lapse score, a function to compute sentence length, a function to automatically segment a paragraph into individual sentences independent of language, right? So there will be functions like that which will play on these data sets. Also, there will be functions to support annotation. So let us say if you are having an OCR task now, the models that we have are reasonably accurate, especially for simple pages, right? So we may pre-populate everything with ML models and ask people to only make small edits, or we may give you an empty output and ask you to edit it, right? So that is what the role of functions is. And also, this is how ML engineers get plugged into the system. If they are training models, etc., they talk to the data sets through these functions. Right? I'm just wondering how much of this detail I should talk about now. Let me not talk about yeah, maybe I'll just talk a bit about the architecture and then show you the demo, right? So key points here. So one main thing is that there are multiple organizations. Each organization is working on a different silo of data, and these are non-overlapping. So think of it like one for AI for Bharat, one for Triple IT Hyderabad doing some work, etc., on the same cloud instance. Then each organization has many workspaces, which naturally map to groups of people working on related projects. For example, you might have a Tamil workspace or a Hindi workspace, but importantly, workspaces don't share data. So it's important that they be related to projects on which you want some exchange of data. So there are two levels of hierarchy: organizations and workspaces. under a workspace, there are data sets. This middle ones that I talked about. There are data sets which are essentially with defined schema. We have a set of schema items, schemas defined for translation, OCR. We are building more as we speak, such as data for translation, for example. And they provide this ground truth view of data, right? As it is uploaded, curated, created, or annotated. Right? Then each annotation effort, so each of this right-hand side things here is thought of as a project, and there are fixed number of project types. So for example, a project for translation, or a project for marking that a translation is correct, or a project for marking a phrase in a sentence and saying this is actually a offensive text, or document translation is also a project, right? It's also a type of thing that we support. And yeah, as I said, we need to build good UI so that we are able to speed up the annotation process. This is very important, right? So every task has a very different set of requirements on the UI side. So each project requires input data which are extracted from a data set and generated or annotated data which are also exported back to often the same data set, right? So this back and forth arrow here, you extract data and put it back here, right? And that is why it's very important to define the schema. So schemas are able to map what are the different columns and how do they semantically relate to the different components in the UI. So UI of the project has maybe a text box here, radio button there, and so on. We need to be able to map what those UI elements do to the annotation and how they reflect back into the columns of the data set. So each project has to define these rules that take data from this data set, take these columns, use these columns to populate this part of the UI, and then take the data back and put it in these columns of the data set. Those rules have to be defined. And you can also sample data. So you could say that take 10% randomly, right? Or take a stratified sampling. Maybe there is some category like domain, and say take 10,000 samples stratified across the domain across domains, right? You can also do filters, right? So this is what is happening. Yeah. So yeah, the other thing is
One Pratyush, question, Pratyush.
yeah.
This document, you can share it?
Yeah. This I can share. It is part of our DMU report also, but I can share with you this particular thing here. Right? What is your email, Vivek?
Vivek@xstep.org.
Okay, that is better. Yeah. So you can edit it also here.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, this part is a bit more complex. So often multiple projects update the data in the dataset. For instance, dataset can be created by a monolingual text collection project, followed by another project on translation on the same dataset, right? We group together such projects as project domains, right? So again, some more opinionated structure. So projects are individual things, but we know that some of them string together and work together. So they are called project domains. And often there is a one-to-one correspondence between project domain and dataset type. So the datasets that we have defined, they also come from some dataset types, a fixed number of them. So there is a categorization both on the project side and dataset type, that is one-to-one mapping. And this, we can come back to this if there are doubts about this, not important right now. And other important thing is that each entry in a data set has additional metadata, right? So if I, for example, have translation, I have a source text, then I should say, where did this source text come from? Maybe it came from uploading of a CSV file. Maybe it came from curating a website. That information is there in the metadata. And suppose it was translated to another language, then who translated it? As part of which project they translated it gets stored as a metadata for that column, right? So every column has metadata column, which gives a history of where this data was created in some sense, right? Some of it could point to things inside Shoonya, some of it outside. And of course, you can have versioned exports of the data in different formats, also supporting Olga. Right? That is the other part, right? So this is roughly the thing. I know it is going through a bit of text in a complex way, but I just pause here to see if you have any questions at this point, and then we can go to the demo.
No questions from my side, Pratyush. We can go to demo.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing. But one question from my end, KD Arvind, is when you look at a structure like this is more like a straw man, right? Right now, what I presented. Do you see something like Anuvad fitting into this, or what's your sense?
Yeah,
Uh,
Anurag can fit in my opinion. Sorry, Arvind, you were like,
yeah, I was having the same thought. So I think it can fit in there. We'll just see once we see the demo, then I'll get better picture.
Okay. Yeah. So the idea of something like Anuvad fits there, right, would be that the React components or whatever components you have on the UI side, that remains as it is, right? That is the UI, that part I was showing on the right.
Mhm.
It just has to talk with the right connections with the data set, and the data set can include documents. And we can export it there, and it comes back here. The annotations come back to this, and then we can export it, right? That is all. What it will then benefit from is the ability of annotators in the system already being available and assigned. They can be assigned to specific projects. So I could say that this is a document, assign it to this person, right? That is already available. Stored data can be exported and so on. So those kinds of things will come for, let's say, free. But we need to ensure that we are able to make that connection to the data sets.
Got it.
So Gokul, what you can do is show both first the Shoonya and Chitralekha UIs, right? How we are thinking about it, and then if there is interest, we can go over the backend, front-end APIs, and so on.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm sharing my screen. Yeah, so I'll quickly just mention here in addition, or just augmenting what Prakash said. Yeah, so this open Shoonya is an open source annotation tool that we are trying to build at for Bharat for uh, supporting all languages of India. So yeah, I'll not go into much detail since Pratyush has mentioned. So one important thing that needs to be mentioned before we go into the demo is that we have different user roles in Shoonya. So as of now, it's a three-level hierarchy. So uh, so the first level of hierarchy is organizations, where we have an organization owners uh, who are responsible for managing an entire organization. Like say, for example, an organization could be IITM or IA for Bharat or Anuvad, or it can be anything. So that's an example of an organization. The next hierarchy inside organization is workspace. So like say, for example, inside AA for Bharat, so we could have different workspace for uh, translation related projects or OCR related projects, or even the workspace could be specific to different languages. Like say, for example, I can have a separate workspace for Hindi, I can have a separate workspace for Marathi and so on. So yeah, so this is workspace, and for each workspace, so we can have multiple managers who is responsible for taking care of that. So inside workspace, so the third level of hierarchy is projects, as you said. So uh, project is basically uh, uh, list of tasks which needs to be annotated. So the manager is responsible for uh, creating this creating these projects in the workspace. So uh, yeah, so as soon as we have created the projects, we can assign language experts to each specific project, so that the language experts can start annotation of the tasks which we have populated inside the project. Yeah, so any questions so far before we move further?
I'm just curious. So is the workspace shareable across multiple users?
Yes, so we can add any number of users across different workspaces. Yeah.
But a project can be owned by only one person, is it?
Yeah, so for each project we have an owner, which is basically the one of the managers of the workspace. Yeah.
But
And we
even can
yeah.
that be shared as well?
Yes, it's also possible to add multiple people as well to that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you just the manager is one who creates it and manages the people, etc. In the task. But typically, there will be many people assigned to one project. So,
Oh,
for example, take 10,000 sentences from Wikipedia, translate them. That's a project definition. You might have 20 people translating that.
oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'll not go any more details. So yeah, I'll just quickly show the demo of the tool. I'll not take much time. So this is the dashboard as soon as we log into the Shoonya platform. So we started building this platform around like two, two, 2 months ago. So most of the things are still work in progress, and yes, we are working on improving many things. Like I said, so as soon as we open uh, uh, the platform, so we have a dashboard where it shows the list of all projects where the specific person is added to, as well as the list of all workspace in which person belongs. So yeah, I'm I'm actually inside multiple workspaces, as well as this is the recent project that I was working on. So this is just being showed in this dashboard. So to just quickly show you uh, how, how do you do annotations of projects. So if I go inside a project, so this is the dashboard for the project. This is the project title, and we have various things like project ID. So each project will be having an unique ID, and we have project description, uh, project type. Say for example, so like you said, so we have uh, um, multiple project types supported in Shoonya. So it could be OCR, or it could be translation, post editing, or anything like that. So uh, yeah, so the project type is mentioned here. uh, and then so this is the table of importance for us here. So this is the table which shows us the list of all uh, the tasks which must be annotated by the uh, annotators who are assigned to this project. So in this sample project to show demo, so I have populated around 100 uh, tasks here, and also I have run machine translation for this. So as you can see, so initially the status of the each task is unlabeled because I have not yet started labeling them. So we have two options for annotating projects. So either we can just randomly go to each task and annotate them individually, or we can just go as a flow and annotate multiple tasks. So I'll just click on this button called label all tasks. So this basically opens a view where the annotator should do the task of translation editing. So here we are displaying the source sentence which is in English. This is the machine translation which we generated using uh, Hindi terms. So this is just for showing reference to the annotator when they are editing it. And here we have the Hindi translation in an editable format so that the annotators can edit it. So yes, as of now, we don't have any transliteration based typing support in our platform. So and also as much as far as we saw, so most of our translators they seem to be using their own physical, not physical, their own uh, keyboard layouts with specific key, key mappings for typing in index scripts. So yeah, because of that, we most probably I thought we supporting this as soon as possible. So as of now, I am using Google Input Tools to do this typing. Uh, Say for example, if I want to change some uh, s- like say for example, if I just wanted to change this Sakta to Sakti, so I can just select this and I can just change it. and yeah, I can just submit this task. So as soon as this is done, so it will automatically move on to the next task where we can annotate the next task in the flow. So this is one example of translation flow that we have built in Shoonya. So any questions so far before we proceed further?
No, Gokul, I think.
No, no,
No, I
I'm
think
just
this
I'm just
because
asking, what is your caching strategy? It looked slightly sluggish the when I hit submit.
Yes, so as of now, it's a development server on which I'm showing the demo. So because of which it's slow. Yeah, the production server is not so slow.
what is this tech stack? You're
The backend is actually based on Django REST framework, and the front end is based on React.js.
okay. And next time when I come to my task, how do I see that?
Sorry, I don't get you.
No, let's say that today I want to, let's say, pick up 20 sentences. I did only 10.
Hmm.
Probably I'll do 10 tomorrow morning.
Hmm.
How do I resume? I'm surely you must have.
Yeah, so if I just go back to this dashboard, so once again, yeah, so if you see here, right, so when I press on label task, so it will actually resume from the place that we left off. So so internally what we do is that, so uh, 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 if we click on label task, so we automatically try to get an unlabeled tasks first, which is not being annotated by any other annotator. So yeah, so if I click on this label task, so it will show me from point from where it is not labeled. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so to get into a bit more of technical details of how we are building this, so like Pratyush said, so this interfaces that we have, right? So, like say for example, this is an interface for translation editing. Uh, uh, we are not actually building these things in the front end. So these annotator annotation interfaces are actually dynamically getting rendered by the front end. So the advantage of following such an approach is that, so uh, it would be just possible for us to add any number of project types easily without having to write any front end code. So the way we achieve this is by, so we basically write an XML file specifying the template of annotation that should be uh, displayed. Like say for example, as you can see, so I, I have a template here which shows all things like headers as well as the uh, fields which needs to be pre-populated. Here I'm pre-populating the input text, which is basically the English sentence. And here I'm pre-populating the machine translation for reference, and I'm pre-populating the uh, machine translation for editing. So this is an example of a generic template that we have. So yeah, so this is how we actually go about adding support for many project types. Uh, yeah, in the front end without having to change anything in the front end. So any questions or comments on this?
But how do you take care of responsiveness and all? Like the layout looks pretty horizontal instead of vertically stacked.
Okay. Yeah, so this is how we actually built it. So if you can see here,
I
right?
mean, on the in the definition,
Hmm.
let's say, how do I stack it?
Yeah, so here I'm explicitly mentioning that. So it should be uh, three different frames of columns, because of which it's getting displayed like this. So if I just remove this, it will be sequential here. That's all. Is that what you asked?
Yep, similar to that one. Like for example, let's say I have a let's say a machine. Like if you take, let's say, a normal machine, this was the issue with Anuvad also that we faced, where the translator were running a machine which was like kind of a low end, pretty low resolution, and the UI was going haywire. I'm not sure how do you render all those stuff on those kind of resolution. I'm sure like you must have looked at it. Uh, you know.
Yeah, so there, right? So what we are doing is most of our annotators will be in-house, so we are expecting them to use laptops. So hopefully we have not so far hit this problem of low resolution screens. But Gokul, you can just try to reduce your browser width and show how it behaves, right? And there is a reasonable margin.
Yeah.
So it reflows, but at some point it becomes unusable, right?
Yeah.
But hopefully people are.
Yeah, listeners not that much also.
Yeah.
No, that's why, like my question was primarily from the. This is good. My question was primary point of view. Let's say when you define the layouts, can you define it, let's say, vertically? You can stack it, all those stuff. If I'm sure like you must have thought about it, depending upon the resolutions that people might work upon. Right now, it might they may be in house. So let's say once you start engaging
Yeah. So,
crowd.
for example, we are not targeting mobile phones. I mean, that's a conscious decision we made, right? Because of the other complexities that we'll assume that people are sitting on a laptop and doing this.
So no, Pratyush, because no, why I'm asking that question, because what I have observed these days, like people, at least the students, they are switching to Chromebook, and the layouts are going haywire. Like, probably you might face this problem when you start sourcing from the crowd. So right now they might be in house.
Huh.
Once you start opening this UI for, let's say, general, then you will have this device variation, no resolution problem. But yeah, that was one of my point. Yeah, but
No,
other.
fair point. I think we'll at least have we'll get a sense of what the minimum resolution is and check in that resolution. Right? Maybe just full HD or even lesser, right? How does that work out in that resolutions? Right? Yeah, we'll
Something like that.
check on that. Yeah.
So when I make an update, so does it maintain versions, or does it directly update the target?
Uh, yeah. Can you please mention what is version? What do you mean by version here?
Let's say like you have that machine translation thing, right? And you, let's say like you edit it and
Mm.
do a submit.
Mm.
So how does it stored in the backend?
It's so we create a new annotation for this task. So we have actually decoupled the task as well as annotation. So task basically means this individual task of doing annotation for this item. So this is called a task, and for each task we can have multiple annotations. So yeah, as soon as I have done this translation and as soon as I click on submit, this annotation will be stored in the backend as an annotation corresponding to this task number 4.
Okay. So let's say like for let's say I have a dictionary and want let's say like 2-3 annotators to do the same task.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you basically have kind of like hash or something just to identify the task, is it, or you directly save that task ID?
Yeah, so the task ID here itself is unique, right? So we just use that the task ID to reference the different annotation for the same task.
Okay, so so just to show the same task to a different annotator, so how do I take care of that?
Currently, we are not supporting that, Arvind.
Okay.
So we are currently just giving people new tasks.
Uh-huh.
If we want to do multiple times, we'll have to think of a completely different way. So even with, I think the way you started the question, right? Suppose the same user
Mm-hmm.
can come and update. In fact, not the same. Even a different user can come and update any existing task.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So let's say you annotate something, I can go and update it, and
Okay.
these will be stored as two different annotations in something like an annotation table.
Oh,
Right. But the important part is, and that's a choice we make
mm-hmm.
when exporting this annotation into the data set.
Mm-hmm.
We take the most recent one, right? Because you'll have to figure out a way to merge them, right? And we just take the most recent one and update it, right?
Mhm.
So we are decoupling the store of the project from the store of the data set and
Mhm.
having a rule that the last one needs to be taken.
So, Pratyush, one thing that I'm hearing a lot of people say that especially in benchmark data sets, they want multiple humans to annotate something. And
Ah.
how is that? I mean, how is that going to be supported?
Yes, so far we had not thought of doing it, right? If we want to do it, then we can figure out some workarounds. For example, as I said, when you annotate and when I annotate, both get stored, right? But when exporting it to our data set, we are taking the last one, right? But the most recent one, we may export them as 2 rows or 3 rows and store all of them. Right? We may do that, but so far we had not planned to do it.
Okay,
Uh,
but I'm saying that I'm pretty sure that the translation teams and all will say that you need to do it. I mean, if we talk to what's the name, Deepthi and all of them, they believe that in these, these what do you call it, benchmark data sets, they need to be multiple human outputs.
Yes, yes. No, we can support it. If there's a need for it, we can support it. Gokul, you were saying something?
Yeah, so just to add upon what Pratyush said, so that is actually supported in the platform. So when creating a project itself, so we have an option to specify uh, how many annotators are required per task. So as of now, I have set the number of annotators per task as 1. So because of which it's just showing a single annotation here. But if I have that required number of annotations as 2 or 3, so uh, uh, it's actually possible for any number of annotators to add annotation for this same task. So yes, this is actually almost supported in the platform. Yes.
Acha, one more thing, no? Let's say since you're using Django, what is your data store? You use Postgre?
Yes, it's PostgreSQL. Yeah.
Okay. Now let's say that tomorrow, if you want to add any columns, when you do migrations and all,
Mm.
when data, when your store becomes fatter and fatter over the period of time,
Mm.
this is like with all the practical thing that currently we're running other stuff. Where I observed that it goes haywire. So how do you take care of this migration? These kind of data model sanity.
Uh,
Amount of data that we have dumped into the system, because Prithvi is talking about a billion sentences. Let's say I'm assuming that you'll be holding all those stuff in this data store. What do you take? Let's say if tomorrow you have to alter it and alter it multiple times.
yeah, that's a good question. So, yeah, as of now, we have two different servers. One is a development server, and another is a production server. So, as you might know, so before pushing any changes to the production server or even doing any migrations on the production server, so we first check it on we actually plan to check it on a shadow database first on the server so that it's working before making it.
Gokul, that is not the question. The question is scalability of what you're doing. So
Even the data model will become very rigid in that case. How do take care when you use some kind of RDBMS kind of, until you don't switch to columnar database? It becomes very tough at later period
Yeah,
of
so Katie, that's a fair question, and the trade-off that we made was the following, right? So when that's why I talked about opinionated data set models and project types and so on, right? So when we, let's say, start a translation project, then we know what kinds of columns we are expected to have, because that is tied to the UI, that is tied to the Django model, that is tied to the Postgre database, right? The three things have to be in sync, right? And we cannot go arbitrarily change one thing somewhere. If we have to change it, then we'll have to change everything, and it has to be a considered decision, right? And the main let's say theme of this tool is that you should be able to create many such tasks, right? So we wanted to ease the process of creating tasks, and then keeping, once the task is designed, keeping it fairly the same schema, right? Still there will be changes depending on what people are asking and
yeah.
so on, and then we may evolve it to create new projects. Let's say if I have translation UI 1, right, and people didn't like it, and I'm creating translation UI 2 with a new schema, then we will create a new model. We'll create a new database, right? We'll just migrate data from the old one to this, archive the old one, right? So we'll do that, and as Gokul was hinting, we are trying to stage it out. We'll do this process first in the development thing, get annotators on board. Once things are frozen, once the columns are known, we move to the development thing where it's a fixed schema from then on.
Sure, brothers. Why I was pointing this out, no, switching to columnar stuff would be advantageous when you're unsure about, the attributes of the data. Uh, yeah, so that's what I've experienced, in other stuff that we're currently doing.
Fair enough, fair enough. So I'll tell you where we were coming from. We were coming from ease of development, keeping it all in Python, doing it with data models and so on. That was the thing. We have to still figure out some of the things on the scalability side, right? So your inputs, etc., will be very important there.
Cool.
So let's say like I'm taking help from external annotators, right? So is there any number of words or the cost estimation for this one as of now?
No, we don't have that, Arvind. None of that is there right now. But yes, that's why when you were presenting it, I was saying that that's a horizontal that can be there. It can be part of the filtering, the sampling process that we have when creating a new task.
Cool. Gokul, yeah, you can.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, like I said, so this is how we have specific annotation templates for each project type. Now, I'll just quickly mention how do we go about defining project type. So, this is an example a project registry schema that we have. So, it's a YML file. So, like Pratyush said, right? So we have grouped different projects in terms of project domains. Like say, for example, inside a project domain called translation. So it could be just straightforward monolingual translation without having any uh, uh, populated machine translation, or we can have a separate interface for translation where we need to do post editing like was showing here. So similarly, we can have another domain for OCR where inside OCR itself we could have multiple uh, uh, annotation project types, right? So this is the schema that we flow. So to just quickly explain one of the schemas, maybe I'll just explain this translation editing itself that I was showing you. So um, so the first one that we mentioned is that so the project mode is annotation mode. So the project that I showed you here, right? So this is an annotation type of project, like you also saw in this project dashboard. This is an annotation type of project. This is one type. Sorry, this is one mode of project, and the other mode is called collection, where uh, we don't have any data to annotate, and we just go about uh, collecting data from scratch. Like say, for example, this could be a task of collecting images or collecting URLs or collecting PDF files from some government websites and so on. So yeah, so these are the two project modes that we support. In this case, the translation editing is an annotation project mode. And we also then specify what is a labeling interface file. So I have just mentioned the path to this XML file that I mentioned. And here comes the important part. So like Pratyush said, right? So in a project, so everything is actually based on the input dataset and the output dataset. So basically, we populate a project from a dataset, and as soon as the annotation is complete, we export the annotations to an output dataset. So that's how we go about creating a project. As you can see here, so the input dataset type is translation pair. So the input fields that needs to be rendered here are input language ID, input text, output language, and output text. So these are not being rendered as of now, but these could be the input to fields to the interface as well as when reading from the backend. And this is a specification for the output data set, which says how we must export the annotations once the project is complete. So, since this is a translation editing, so this class called translation pair itself has the machine translation as well as the source sentence. So we actually export into the same data set itself, and the type of exporting is in place. So we are not creating any new rows. In the existing rows from where we read the data, we are actually going and storing the annotations, which is basically nothing but this output text, which is done by the annotator. So this is one example of a project type. So similarly, we have a large list of the project types. Yeah. Any questions here? Any comments?
No, I was just wondering, like for example, since you're using Django and your models are fixed, data models are fixed, instead of coming from Swagger, you could have come from bottom-down approach itself to generate these definitions, isn't it? So why you have chosen the top-down approach here, like defining model, defining the spec outside, and then instead of relying upon your model.
This is actually not a specification for the data set. So the specification for the data set, it's actually specified using the Django models itself. So it's about defining how project should function. So basically how the project type should function. So uh, uh, there could be multiple project types which work on the same data set. Uh, Type, right? Like say for example, here the data set type is translation pair and the project type is translation editing. So we can have multiple project types which are working on this data set type. So to establish this mapping, so we have this registry. Does that answer your question?
Sure, Google it answers briefly, but all I'm trying to say that since as Pratyush said that the models are kind of fixed in Django, it comes out of the box, isn't it? Once your models are done available, you have designed the model, the Swagger comes out of it directly. If you use
No,
any
Katie, that is of course there, right? So, for example, the CRUD operations that we do on the models, they come out of the box, right?
no,
And many of the APIs, Swagger APIs, which we have written, actually directly map to the data model features, right? So we don't rewrite any of them. We mostly use them as it is. But I didn't get what you mean by top down, bottom up. Maybe this
so
terminology is
I,
not.
I was I was trying to say, Pratyush, since your data models are fixed, once you've designed the data model,
Yes.
then you require a route where you can do these operations like CRUD and all, right? Now to
Correct.
achieve CRUD, or let's say when you connect various models, when you do, let's say, one-to-one mapping, or let's say one-to-n mapping, when you do that one on the model in the Django model, Django by default gives you the Swagger specs, right? That's what I was
Yeah,
trying to say.
for what?
For
For which
everything
functions?
that currently that we are seeing on the screen, so it gives you
No, I
out
don't
of the
know.
box
Wait, what are you seeing on the screen? What is given out of the box?
the Swagger spec, the YAML that we are writing. So my question was primarily, since we have defined this YAML, so first we have defined the YAML and then we have generated the model, or once we have identified the model, if we have identified the model, then the YAML comes out of the box. That
Okay, so,
was
so
the
here are
question.
the components, Katie, right? So there is the model, right, which is the
Mm.
model for the data set. Okay.
Okay.
And then there is the UI, which is the JSX file that you're seeing now, and that contains you saw that the template for showing different components there and so on, right? And then there is how you take data out from a data set, which has a fixed data model, like you say, and create a project. So there is a mapping that happens from a data set, which might contain, let's say, 50 columns,
Mm.
to create a project which only extracts 3 or 4 columns and shows them in a particular UI.
Okay.
That mapping is happening here, right? It's like saying that you have two data models, and there is a little bit of a pipe that we're creating on how to route data from here to there. And then there's a reverse pipe also. How does the data come back? That is what is being templated here.
Okay.
right?
Got it.
So if it was just one model and if you are updating it, the Django provides everything out of the box. In fact, we are using them when we create update functions, etc. We're directly using them. But this is this relation between these two stores.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think one misunderstanding could be that. So since you said that this, I mean, I'm assuming that you are thinking that this is a Swagger API schema YML, but no, this is not a Swagger API schema. So this is just our own custom schema for mentioning how a project should function for exporting and importing. Yeah, that's all.
Okay. Yeah, because once you define the entities, then you do any operation or entity, uh, the Swagger spec comes out of box. Not only for one entity, but let's say if I do, let's say entity one cross entity two, if I create a new entity out of it, so Django has that provision that gives you E1 cross E2 output. So this is primarily on the. So that's where I got confused then.
Okay,
Okay.
no problem.
Yeah, so it's like this, right? So there's a big table, wide table, and from this wide table, we are creating a narrow table specific to a particular annotation UI. And there will be some columns in the narrow table which have to go back to the wide table and stored in a particular way and so on. So that exchange is being captured in this schema file. And this is the definition of a project, and we are registering multiple projects, right? Each is one of these items. That is all that is being done here.
So Pratyush,
Yeah. So I think we are running out of time. So maybe I'll quickly show that Chitralekha demo tutorial as well if we have no
Do you
questions.
want to show the OCR UI Gokul? Chitralekha also we can show and the OCR. Maybe both. I don't know. Do we have time? Or it's
So yeah, let's see what. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
we have
at
time.
least.
I would like to see what
yeah. Briefly, the OCR one a couple of minutes, and then Chitralekha has the video. You
And what
can
about
play that.
speech? We have not got any speech stuff.
No, we haven't done speech yet, really.
Atish, as of now, we don't have the OCR populated yet, so I think it will take some time to do that. So I have not yet populated. I thought I'll just show this trans.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
So maybe in the next demo we can show that. Is that fine?
Yeah, sure. Just for people to know, right? So in OCR, we have where you can upload a image, and then the bounding boxes show up for each of the regions of the text as Tesseract would find or Google OCR would find, and then you have the boxes for each of the text, each of the text for each of the boxes. You can edit that and you can submit, right? That's what we have. Yeah. And that is also supported in the same backend. So far we have been working to get the backend somewhat ready. It's still shaky, and then we have tried to build two very different UIs to show that it can generalize to arbitrary stuff, and then we will build out other tasks.
Cool.
What Gokul will show now is something slightly different, which is just the web UI for Chitralekha, which we are hoping to at some point integrate with this. Maybe in a loose way, right? So Gokul, do you want to just play that?
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe it's a bit of a slow video. Maybe you can play it at 1.5 or so.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Kaushal from AI for Bharat. Today I'm going to demonstrate our tool Chitralekha, which is a simple to use video subtitling tool for Indian languages. When we open Chitralekha for the first time, it will show a screen which looks like this. On the right side, we can see a menu. I will walk you through the steps required for subtitling. As the first step, let's open YouTube and get the video that we want to caption. This is a Hindi video from the Tic Tac Learn channel. Let's copy the link for this video. I've copied the link. Let's head back to Chitralekha. We can paste the link in this bar over here and click on Fetch Video. This will load the video from YouTube. Alternatively, we can also open the video and subtitles from our computer. The video is now loaded. Let's play the video to preview the first few seconds. We can also use this bar below the video here, scroll bar, to quickly check the video. This video looks good to me. Let's now go to transcription and go ahead and click transcribe. This runs our AI for Bharat speech to text system, which converts audio into captions. The transcription process is now complete. We can see the captions that have been generated on the right-hand side. Now let's play the video to see the auto-generated subtitles, which will be displayed at the bottom of the video.
हवा के अजब खेल भाग 1 हवा की विशेषताओं को समझना। हवा हूँ, हवा मैं, अनोखी हवा हूँ। कभी ठंडी हूँ तो कभी गर्म हूँ, कभी शांत हूँ तो कभी तेज हूँ।
As you can see, we were able to visualize the automatic captions for this video. You might have noticed that the subtitles were not perfect. There were errors like spelling mistakes, missing words and punctuations, and improperly aligned captions. Let us now look at how we can rectify this. Let's go back to the first caption. Let's play this part of the video once again to see what the audio was.
हवा के अजब खेल भाग 1
Okay, let's rectify these corrections. The word ajab is misspelled here. We can type the words using an English keyboard, and on the drop-down, select the correct Hindi transliteration for that word and go ahead and click that. The second word, khel, also will rectify. Hawa khel, ajab khel, bhag 1. So we have fixed this caption. Let's go ahead to the second caption. Let's play this part again.
हवा की विशेषताओं को समझना।
The visheshta word was wrong. Let's fix that. The third caption looks correct.
मैं अनोखी हवा हूँ। कब
The word who was missed here.
मैं अनोखी हवा हूँ। कभी ठंडी हूँ तो कभी गर्म हूँ, कभी शांत हूँ तो कभी तेज हूँ।
Chitralekha also provides us with a timestamp view of the captions. Using this timestamp view, we can drag and drop the captions to adjust its timestamps. This allows us to do some advanced edits. For example, let's say we wanted this Anokhi Hawa Hu to be as a separate caption. So what we could do is we could reduce the timestamp of this caption and add a new caption here by selecting this region. And then we can cut the Anokhi Hawa Hu part from the previous caption and paste it here as a new caption. Let's play this part.
मैं अनोखी हवा हूँ। कभी ठंडी हूँ तो कभी गर्म हूँ, कभी शांत।
Also, if we wanted to merge two captions, let's say we wanted to merge this previous caption with the current one, we could right click on it and merge with next. This will merge the two captions to produce a single caption. Okay, now that we have made some edits, let's go back to the start of the video and play it once again.
हवा के अजब खेल भाग 1 हवा की विशेषताओं को समझना। हवा हूँ, हवा मैं, अनोखी हवा हूँ। कभी ठंडी हूँ तो कभी गर्म हूँ, कभी शांत हूँ।
I am satisfied with the captions now. So we are ready to export them now. On the menu, you can see that you can export your subtitles in 3 formats. Let's click on Export SRT. We have downloaded the subtitles now, which can be embedded back into your YouTube video. So that was it. Using Chitralekha, you can do same language subtitling as simple as that. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions?
No, one question I wanted to ask is that if we are going to consider this as a replacement to Comet, we have to go all the parts, right? Which is the translation, the ASR, the translation, and the creation of the text, whatever the voice out, right? So those things, are they there in this tool, and we just showed this part, or what is what?
Vivek, this is not a replacement for Comet. This is for meeting our DMU goals to transcribe content, right? So that's where we have started. So we want to take Prasar Bharati content, for example, transcribe them and get subtitles, right? The other parts like translation and synthesis, they perhaps could be chained tasks in Shoonya, right? So I might generate outputs here, then release them for translation. And once the translation is done, again release them for speech synthesis, right? But we didn't plan to do it all in a single UI. We are hoping that we can take this UI and somehow make it work with Anuvad and have transcription happening, which is one of the goals we have.
I didn't understand. So Anuvad, what do you mean by what do you understand? I mean,
Sorry, not Anwar. I don't know why I'm saying Anwar. So include this as part of Shoonya, and then make this task one. Task one becomes you take a video and you transcribe it. Right. Task two could be translate those transcriptions, and then task three, if required, to speak them out. Right. But they will be separate tasks with data being generated, and you create a new project out of it.
Okay. And this is now integrated into Shoonya. Is that correct?
Not yet, not yet. We are planning. So this was done before, but this was done for the bird project as a standalone thing. And then we've started building Shoonya. We have to figure out how to integrate this.
Yeah, that's it. I had to present from my
This
side.
is nice. Only thing was, how do you accommodate the longer sentences? Let's say you have multiple lines. If the speaker is speaking for the longer duration, you will get more words out. Probably, something on the UI needs to be. Otherwise, this is super nice.
Yeah, Katie, the line break is there, and so the boxes. One of the line, in fact, boxes had 2 lines. It is at least supports 2 lines. But you are right. If we have to go for even longer segments, then we have to reflow those boxes. Right. Currently, they are static. Yeah.
Otherwise, this is nice, Pratyush.
Yeah. Thanks to Gokul and others. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Gokul. Very good presentation of both the parts. So that is what we are building, right? So I think you're seeing some things now, but there's a lot more to be done. At least we have a good sense of what the design and architecture looks like. Things that remain to be done are ensuring that architecture is robust enough, building other UIs, and then figuring out things on scalability, etc. Like you were saying, Katie, right? About how do you store it, how do you scale it up, and so on. We have some ideas, but I'm sure they need more refinement. So this is where we are overall in the process, right? And again, when we were talking with Pramod, right, when we were trying to show what the goal of this whole thing that Xstep is funding is, so he was saying that do fewer things and do them in a way in which things are aligned, right? So he was saying, so we didn't show any demos, I think, but when we said, hey, we are trying to do a few things like Chitralekha, Shoonya, and Anuvad, and ensure that these things evolve over the next 1 year. His point was try to ensure that they are integrated into one platform where you can upload content and get annotation done, whether for training models or for maintaining content, right? So then that was the point where we said, let's have a call with Taranto guys and try to think of the roadmap to do that. Right?
But Pratyush, separately, we need to have an architecture review because I think we need to make sure before we go too far that we are actually not kind of messing up, right? So that's something that I want to be.
Yeah. Let's do that, Vivek. But also let us have some clarity whether this idea of building Shoonya out, which is a fairly large effort, is worthwhile, and also then align the teams on that goal, right?
We have to align the teams on that goal. But I just also want to get a better feel. Is this something that is going to last and for a longer time, right? So that's something that.
If it doesn't last, we'll have to make it last, right? We have to figure out what are the things that are not good enough. I like the inputs that Katie is saying and build them out, right? So there's no tool like this that is out there, right? So we are trying to build something in open source which would be useful. And if there are flaws in the architecture, we have to fix them, right?
Pratyush, I was just looking at this one VOTT and all. Have you explored all those VOTT? And there was one more thing. I don't know when we were trying to do one annotation work, I forgot the name of that one. But I can dig into that links. So those are also I think they have license at MIT. Probably that would be also a good place to look at. It does video annotation and then image annotation, and it helps you to do NER marking. I think I forgot the name, but I'll just try to share some link which are like MIT licensed and.
Sure. Okay. You mean the output subtitle formats, is it?
Yeah, where an annotator goes and do all this marking annotation and then export the information out of it.
Right. Yeah. And we'll be happy to look at it. And we are in fact trying to build guidelines on what what transcription should look like, and we are recognizing that we need to do few things like if there's a dog barking somewhere, you should say that dog is dog barking sound and so on, right? So I think if you can share that, I'll take a look at it, right? And that'll be
Yeah,
helpful.
I'll share that.
Okay.
Cool. This was very good. Thanks, Gokul.
Yeah, thanks, Gokul.
Thank you, Gokul.
All right. Thank you then. Goodbye.
All right. Cool.
Okay. Have a nice evening. Good night.
Bye.
Kelly,
Good night.
Agartik.
2 minutes of your time. Last 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'll give you a call then on the other line.
Arvind. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll patch
Okay.
them.
Good night.
Sure.
Good night.